It's been almost 2 decades since we started our journey to educate and help you take action so you may better manage your financial future. Our goal is to help you accomplish your life's purpose. This podcast reveals financial tips, strategies, and insights that will help you to set your financial goals and guide you along the way. This is Managing Your Financial Future, brought to you by the advisors at Lucia Capital Group. Welcome back. This is Managing Your Financial Future. We thank you all so much for joining us. Wow, this is... I'm Johnny Dean. I'm your podcast. You knew that. You folks know who I am. You know who this guy is, Professor Rick Plum,
That's
CFP.
Me.
That's you.
That's me.
Certified Financial Planner Professional, the guy with all the not degrees, but the designations, let's put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of
certifiable one.
Yeah, that's you. We're both certifiable. But I'm your podcast host. I'm not an advisor. I should remind people of that, but I do hang around with them, in particular, Professor Plum. And they should know who we are because, number one, this is the last episode of the current season before we take like 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Couple
I don't know.
week hiatus.
Be back in early 2023.
Wow.
2020. It's not that long ago where we said, can you believe it's already 2012? You know,
I can remember Y2K.
I was in a meeting the other day with some folks, and there were 6 of us, and I was at age 58, and I'm not that old. I mean, I'm older, but I was 20 years older than the next oldest person. They were in conversations about stuff that
You had no idea what they were talking about?
No, and I said, you know what? I really feel old. It seems like I talk about this a lot. I got to stop saying that. But you and I are in the same catalog, same category here, so that's okay.
I'm just a little older.
Just a little. Anyway, age is going to play into our particular podcast today. So I want to say this is also episode number 118. So I'm hopeful that a lot of you folks have listened to all the other episodes 1 through 117. We've come a long way, and we've talked about a lot of important stuff. Things have changed over the last couple of years that we've been doing these podcasts, and we try to keep you up to date. And one of the things, I mentioned age, this has to do with some Social Security, which we're going to talk about today. Important things that you need to know. Now, before we get into pensions and Social Security and all that stuff, and the offset, there are a lot of things that people don't know. Let's just go back over what we had talked about, I think it was 3 weeks ago, something like that has to do with the cost of living adjustment for Social Security. Professor, let's just go over that again in case some people missed it.
We've got one of the largest cost of living adjustments Social Security's ever had. I think it's like the 4th or 5th largest ever. The largest since 1981. And so benefits for people receiving Social Security will increase by 8.7% come January. So if you're listening in December, you're looking forward to January's payment, you're going to get a bigger payment.
So if my payment is $1,000 a month,
it goes
I'm
to
going to be
$1,087.
I get an $87 raise.
Yeah, not bad.
That's very good.
And if you are on Medicare, normally a lot of times or many times when we have a cost of living adjustment on our Social Security benefit, much of that increase is eaten up by an increase in Medicare, the premium we pay for Medicare Part B or C. And so, we may get a $20 increase on our benefit and a $12 increase on our, or a $20 increase on Medicare. So it's like, wow, we didn't get much of an increase on our benefit being deposited to the bank. This year, actually, Medicare premiums are going down.
This year, meaning starting 2023.
Going into 2023, the Medicare premium is going to go down by $5.20.
What is it currently? This is for Medicare Part B. Part B, yes.
Right. $174.90. Okay. And it's going to it's going down $5.20.
169 something.
Yeah, or some 170. It's
all right, so it's right around there.
I can't remember.
And if you're not paying that, it's because you're in a special situation that.
Right, and so you're talking about IRMA, income-related monthly adjustment amount. So those premiums are going down slightly as well, because those are all a percentage of the Medicare premium.
Did we talk about why people's Medicare premiums are going down?
There was an adjustment made. There was adjustment made in 2020. It was a fairly large increase from 2021 to 2022. They said we're expecting a certain Alzheimer's treatment to be included and cost X. They were able to negotiate it out, and it didn't happen as much. And so a large portion of the increase from 2021 to 2022 was because of this. They've taken that out. And so
we're passing the savings on to you.
Yes, and that's what's happening. So you get a little bit more there. But so that's that's a good thing going forward.
It is a good thing. I mean, you got your 8.7% increase in your Social Security benefits, and
so if
it's not being offset by any Medicare increase
this year. Yeah. So you will see that if you're a Social Security recipient, you'll receive that increase on your January payment. If you're an SSI, supplemental social insurance recipient, you'll see that in December's payment.
Okay, so a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question. Before we're going to talk about pensions and Social Security in one second, but you mentioned this off the air, and I want to bring this up because this is what some people have asked. There's an 8.7% increase given to people who are going to be who are receiving their Social Security now. They'll see an 8.7% cost of living adjustment upward come January 1. Well, there are people who are not taking their Social Security yet, okay? They know what their benefit would have been, but they're delaying for whatever reason,
right?
And they're not going to take it in January, or they hadn't planned on taking it in January. And they're saying, well, wait a minute, if I wait a full year to take mine.
What if I was expecting to take it in March of next year? And so I'm not getting it now, so am I going to miss out on the 8.7% increase?
Exactly. So
it's not an exact science. I mean, it's an exact science, but the way that they calculate the actual benefit, the formula has certain thresholds, and those thresholds increase. So you get a larger percentage of a larger number each time they do these. These called these bend points. And some years, the result from the new formula creates a larger increase in the benefit than the COLA does. And some years it creates a smaller increase in the benefit than the COLA does. For this period of time, the increase in the benefit formula is going to create about an 8 point. It depends on where you are in the income scheme, your average income over the 35 years. It's not exactly 8.7. It's maybe 8.3, 8.4%. So you're still getting your benefit is still going to increase because of the underlying inflation. It's just not going to be exactly 8.7.
Okay, so if by waiting my benefit was going to go up to 2,000, well, let's say 1,000.
Well, waiting the extra couple of months, you're going to go up. If you wait 3 months, your benefit goes up by 2% just on its own, just for waiting, because you're delaying taking your Social Security benefit. It goes up as long as you're not already 70, it goes up until you're 70. On a quarterly basis, it's 2%. So if I wait 2 months, I'm going up 2%. And so the question is, if I wait 3 months to take my Social Security, am all I'm going to get is the 2% because of delayed retirement credit, or should I take it now and get the 8.7% COLA? Well, the reality is you'll get about an 8.5% COLA underneath the formula, and you'll get your 2% for waiting.
Well, which is good. Yeah. I mean, that's
so
good.
It still makes, if you were planning on waiting, it still makes sense to wait.
What about for those of us who are still a number of years out? You can go online and you can get the projections. My projections are pretty steady. Over,
and if you run it again next year, you'll see a bigger projection.
So there will be, everybody pretty much
it'll be a little over 8% higher, not including. So your full retirement age projection should be a little bit about 8%, 8.5% higher than it shows this year.
Do the projections normally go up anyway, just based on
because
normal?
They're looking at the formula.
So they include the cost of living adjustments in their projections for somebody who's 55.
Right, but it's not the same cost of living adjustment that you're talking about.
Understood, as you just said.
Now, your projection will go up, not only because of COLA, but because you have another year of $1 million of earnings. And you're one of those really high wage earners, and it replaces those $5 years that you earned when you were playing radio overnights, DJ.
That's about right.
Because it takes take the best 35 years of earnings, and so the earnings that you and I are putting on the books today are most likely replacing the earnings from 36 years ago when we weren't earning very much.
Yeah, that is true. So we're getting the lower ones dropping off.
The lower ones dropping off. And so we're getting a little bit of an increase from that. We're getting an increase from the formula increasing.
Well, that's good all the way around.
Yeah.
I want to know about that $1 million earnings that you... That I hadn't factored that in.
That must have been pre-tax.
That's new to me. Yeah. Must be because that net is not, 1/12 of a million. Let's put it that way. Anyway, so I wanted to get that information out to you folks. It can be a little bit complicated and so forth. So, but okay, now I want to get to also the main topic here, which took me a few minutes to get to. We had to get through this important stuff. But this also has to do with Social Security. And if you saw the title of the episode, you know that we're going to be talking about how your pension may have a negative effect on your Social Security benefits. Now, Professor Plum, there are rules in effect let's back up. People pay in order to be part of the Social Security club, if you want to put it that way, right?
Correct.
They're paying what are called FICA taxes. Maybe
Right.
you can explain how this works.
Well, we pay into the Social Security. We have to earn Social Security. We have to pay in based on our wages. The first $147,000 of wages in 2022 are subject to FICA, Fair Insurance Contribution Act. And it's 6.2% for the employee. And then your employer is also kicking in an additional 6.2% of your pay up to that threshold. And so you're paying into the system, and you have to pay into it for at least 10 years for 40 credits. It used to be quarters. And then they realized they weren't reporting it on quarters. They were reporting it on annuals. So
all right,
they said
so it's
40
credits. Yeah.
And so that's 10 years of paying into the Social Security Administration. And then you are now eligible for a retirement benefit. And it's going to be based still on your best 35 years. So if all you did was work the 10 years, that gets you in the game, but it doesn't get you a good seat. Because you're still going to be based on 35 years of earnings and all the other issues that go along with how they calculate the benefit. But for some people, they work for 10 years, they earn their credits, and then they go into a job that is exempt from paying FICA taxes. They become a state employee or a firefighter, a law enforcement, first responder of some form, or a teacher in several states where they do not pay FICA taxes. They earn a pension, and in many cases a very nice pension, but they're not paying into Social Security. But they've earned their 40 credits. They've earned their 40 quarters.
So they have a
Social
benefit
Security
of some kind.
But they also have this other pension from work where they did not pay into Social Security. And Social Security sees that as double dipping. Or the federal government.
Social Security does not. But
the federal government sees that as double dipping. And the reason for that is that Social Security is based and skewed to the lower wage earner. So somebody who makes, let's say, $20,000 a year has roughly 85% of their income replaced by a Social Security benefit. Somebody who's making $100,000 a year only gets about 30% of their income replaced by Social Security. So the higher wage earner gets less of a Social Security benefit as a percentage of their income than the lower wage earner.
Which makes sense. That's kind of how it was designed.
But if you take somebody who's worked at a fairly high level for 10 years only, so maybe they were a teacher from age 25 to 55. You got 30 years teaching or in a state municipality that did not pay into Social Security. And they've got a very nice pension from that 30 years, and they had a pretty nice wage for that period of time. They leave that and they go into private sector and they make, $100,000 a year for 10 years.
Between age 55 and 65. Yeah.
So they have earned a Social Security benefit that is the same as somebody who made $30,000 a year for 30 years. Because their income, they had, $1 million worth of earnings on the books, whereas, the person, so they have the same benefit as somebody who didn't have the same opportunities.
Right.
I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but
but I get
that's
it.
the way they look at it.
Yeah.
They say somebody who was at a very high wage could earn the same Social Security benefit
as somebody
in 10 years as somebody who worked 35 years at a very low wage.
Sure.
And never had the opportunity. And that person that worked at the very high wage for 10 years also has that pension from another employment.
So they're saying that there's a pension and a high Social Security benefit and something isn't right about that.
And it's not fair.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the Congress saying this.
Life's not fair, but okay.
So they say, okay, well, for those individuals that have that pension from work not covered by Social Security, and they've also earned their own pension, Social Security, we're going to use a different formula for calculating their Social Security benefit. And we're going to reduce that benefit by up to half of the benefit with a maximum of roughly $500 right now.
Okay.
So at full retirement age, if my full benefit was $800, pretty much it's going to be cut in half. If it's over $1,100, then I'm only going to lose about $500 of it going forward. So there's a limit on how much they can.
All right,
offset.
so people's heads are kind of swimming, just saying, "Wait a minute, what are you talking about here?"
Well, you get a reduced Social Security benefit. So if you're counting on $1,000 a month from Social Security, and you're in this situation, you're probably only going to get $500.
Where you have a pension, where you're when you start receiving, let's say,
when you start receiving a pension from an employment situation where you did not pay FICA taxes,
which, as you said, is oftentimes municipalities, government workers,
right?
Teachers.
It's not going to be a private sector employment.
No, but some state teachers, firefighters, police,
a lot of
those
state
kind of things.
And workers. And in the old days, federal workers were that way, but now all federal workers pay into, since 1984, have paid into FICA.
So so they're going to reduce your Social Security benefit based on how much of a pension you're getting from this job where you didn't pay FICA?
Well, yes and no. They're going to, first off, they're just going to give it a new formula. They're just going to reduce it based on the formula. But at most, if your pension that you earned from your work not covered by Social Security is very small as well, the most that it's going to offset is half of the pension. So if my pension is $500, the most my offset on my Social Security is going to be is $250.
Okay.
Now, on the other hand, if my pension is $5,000, the most the offset is going to be right now is about $500 because of the way the formula works. So it is a it's a give back.
So the larger your pension benefit from a job where you did not pay pay FICA, the greater your benefit will be reduced.
But at worst
your Social Security benefit will be reduced.
Yeah, the Social Security is going to get reduced. But at worst case, like I said, right now, for somebody at full retirement age, it's a little over $500 at the most.
Now, this is what there's a term for this, and if people want to look it up, the Social Security, it's called the windfall elimination provision with the WEP.
Yeah,
yes.
And so it's out there. It's been there a long time. There have been discussions about repealing it and getting rid of it. I don't know how much Congress is really discussing it, but it is being discussed in Congress to get rid of it. We'll see if that ever comes to fruition. But it's one of those things. Now, if you have, maybe you're not the teacher for 30 years and then worked in private sector for 10, but you're the private sector worker for 25, 30 years, and then you became a teacher for 10, and you didn't pay into Social Security
for those 10 years.
Yeah. But you've got like 30 years paying into Social Security. Is it still going to be the same thing? Well, Social Security has said, if you've got predominantly Social Security earnings, and what they look at that is, do you have substantial earnings in the Social Security environment? In today's world, that means about $22,000 of income. So
per year.
And that's obviously from 20, 30 years ago, the number was quite a bit less.
Of course.
But if you have more than 20 years of substantial earnings in Social Security, we will reduce the impact of the WEP. If you have 30 years of substantial earnings or more, you will not be subject to the windfall elimination provision, even if you have a big pension from work where you didn't pay into Social Security.
Oh, so there is no WEP as long as you've had 30 years of substantial earnings from Social Security?
I know some firefighters who are firefighters never paid into Social Security, and they've got fairly nice pensions. But they were like a 4-day on, 4-day off, or they had some crazy schedules. And when they were not working, they had multiple days off. They had another job. They were contractors, plumbers, realtors, and they made good income on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe I don't know which job was the side job, but and they've paid into it for the 25, 30 years, and so they don't have much, if any, of an impact from the windfall elimination provision, even though their pension is based on 20, 30 years of not paying into Social Security.
Wow,
because they did pay into Social Security with their other job.
But suffice to say, if you have a pension from a job where you were not covered, where you were not paying into FICA, and you start receiving that pension, you have to be receiving the pension, you should be aware that there's a chance, maybe a good chance, that some up to half of your Social Security benefits may wind up being reduced.
Right. And that's the benefits that you have earned, the Social Security benefits that you've earned on your own work record. But what about somebody who, if in the old traditional family, you had one worker and one stay-at-home parent, usually.
Usually it's the mom that stayed at home and the dad.
So the worker gets their benefit, and then there's a spousal benefit for that stay-at-home individual or person that didn't have much in the way of earnings. So there, you basically get 1.5 times benefit because the spousal benefit's roughly 50% of the worker's benefit. But what if that person didn't stay home? They were the municipal worker, the teacher.
Sure.
They have no Social Security benefit of their own because they didn't work in a job that paid Social Security taxes. they worked in a job where they did not pay Social Security taxes.
So they're going to get a pension.
They're going to get a pension.
And they would like to get a spousal benefit based on their spouse's work record.
Well, they've put up with that spouse for all these years, and every other spouse gets a spousal benefit. Why shouldn't they? Well, the government has said that, again, is double dipping, and you had the privilege of working and earning your own pension. Therefore, you may or may not be entitled to any spousal retirement benefit. And so if you have a pension from work where you did not pay into Social Security, and you are also eligible for a Social Security benefit from somebody else's work record, your spouse, your late spouse, your ex-spouse, somebody else's work record, now you're subject to something else called the government pension offset. And they'll just they just look at, what is your pension? How much is the pension you're earning?
Yeah.
2/3 of that number reduces any spousal or survivor, any other retirement benefits, or any other benefit from Social Security that you get by dollar for dollar, by 2/3 of your pension.
Okay, so let's say I have a $2,100 pension.
Yep.
And my spousal benefit is $1,200.
You aren't getting a spousal benefit
because you take 2/3 of my pension
that you're receiving. You're receiving $2,100. 2/3 is $1,400,
and they say
dollar for dollar, you're reduced. And if your spousal benefit or your survivor benefit or whatever benefit you're entitled to from somebody else's work record is less than $1,400, you're not getting a penny.
In my example, $1,400.
Yeah, in your example. So 2/3 of the pension offsets dollar for dollar any Social Security you get from somebody else's work record. Government pension offset. And even if you did have your own benefit and you work 20, 30 years, whatever, it's still there is no time horizon on the government pension offset. It's, so
even if I worked for 30 years in the private sector, or no, 30 years, and then I worked another 10 years where I earned a pension,
right?
A good pension, let's say.
And then unfortunately you're a widow or widower, and so you're also eligible for a survivor benefit. They're going to look at the survivor benefit less 2/3 of your pension. They're going to look at your own benefit less the windfall elimination provision and pay you whichever one is higher.
And as you said, in some cases, depending on the pension, their survivor benefit or
zero
or spousal benefit, if it's that, could be wiped out.
Oh, completely.
Wow.
So that's the fun days of Social Security.
That's the trouble with this is I can see both sides. I look at this though. I look at this and say, okay, nothing's fair. I get that. Don't expect life to be fair. It isn't.
No.
But I'm looking at this and saying, this doesn't seem cool to me.
It doesn't, but they do have a sort of a point. A good friend of mine.
So I'm saying, I understand their point. So I'm torn.
I know. A good friend of mine was in the private sector for 10 years, then a teacher for 25, 30 years. And he was lamenting the issue of the windfall elimination provision. And I said, I'm not taking sides on this, but here's why.
Yeah.
And I kind of explained it to him, and he goes, dang you, Rick. He's kind of like, where are you? He goes,
yeah.
I don't like it, but I can kind of see the point.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't like it.
But I see the point.
Yeah.
But I really don't like it. You could go on and on like that.
Yeah. It's a catch-22. Like both sides. Yeah. But
it really is.
There are discussions to get rid of it.
Of all of it, like
I believe to get rid of both sides.
And the government pension offset?
I believe so. Because what's the use to get rid of one without the other?
That's true. Boy, I do, man. Especially when it comes to the survivor benefit. See, here's the thing. I'm used to I'm getting a pension, and I you're married. Okay, so you have a pension, and then you have both Social Securities. And if you're not going to get
if you have a pension and a Social Security, let's say that one Social Security is $2,500 and the pension's $3,000, so you got $5,500 a month coming in. And now, unfortunately, somebody passes away. The Social Security owner passes away. My Social Security is going to drop to $500 because 2/3 of my pension is going to knock out $2,000. So now I go from having a household budget of $5,500 coming in to a household budget to $3,500. That's a big drop.
Well, it is. And we talk about this, not even just talking about pensions, but we've talked about Social Security planning as well. People are confused oftentimes on the survivor benefit because they think that, they say, okay, well, my spouse and I, we both get, $2,500 a month, let's say. We had good jobs.
Yeah.
And we both get $2,500 a month of Social Security. And so when one of
the
them,
survivor benefit's $2,500, so I'll keep getting $5,000.
well, that's what people think. They think, okay, so my spouse dies, I'm getting my $2,500, but I hear that there's a survivor benefit, which I read is $2,500. So I'll keep getting mine and I'll get a survivor benefit, but it doesn't work that way.
Well, and that's why the GPO, the government pension offset, is there as well, because otherwise that person, if the government pension offset wasn't there, they would continue to get, their $3,000 and the $2,500. So they would be better off than two Social Security earners.
So is that better off dead? Are you saying?
Yes.
Is that? We don't want.
They're
to create
not better off. Well, maybe you could say they're better because you're getting $5,500 for one person.
Well, that's what I mean. You get a raise.
Oh, yeah, but your taxes go up. So
Speaking of offset, that could offset that. I don't want to put any ideas in anybody's head. But it is part of Social Security planning. If you and your spouse have very similar benefits, no matter what they are, and you're used to living on that, when one of the spouses dies, which is in most cases what happens, somebody goes before the other one, you could wind up losing almost half of your Social Security income. Now, if you have one who's got a $3,000 benefit, and you have one spouse who's got a $800 benefit or $1,000, and one of them dies, well, the $1,000's going to drop off, but you'll
the
still
higher
get
one continues.
We're
assuming this all happens after full retirement age.
Right, because of the amounts. I'm just trying to I'm giving an example here.
But the
impact isn't as great. The impact isn't as great of losing a benefit. But you have to understand the survivor benefit is not an insurance policy. It doesn't continue.
No, it only continues if there is less of a Social Security benefit on your own side.
Now you still get the $200,
$225, $255,
$255.
What is it? I can't remember that one because
it's from 1939 or something.
It's a small death benefit for a spouse. It
was supposed to take care of funeral expenses, I think, was the I thought I read somewhere.
Back in the day.
Back when $255 could probably cover that.
But all this comes down to planning. When you're doing retirement planning, it's not always just, can we make it as a couple?
Right.
We have to plan the contingencies. We do this when we're talking about pensions. Do you take the single life? Do you take the joint life? How much of the joint life? A 50% or 100%? So there's options to deal with the pension planning. There's also options to deal with the Social Security planning. And what happens, do we have enough money? Do we have enough assets, cash flow and things of that nature? If one of the spouses passes away very early and we leave a long survivor life. I mean, if they both pass away, at relatively the same time, it's probably not that big of an issue. Unfortunately, they're gone, but it didn't cost too much. But the big issue is I've seen lots of different, clientele and marriages, people that are 10, 15, 18 years difference in age. That's most likely going to create a fairly long widowship or whatever you call it.
Well, yeah, unless they find somebody else,
Not going there.
I'm not going there either. But what it comes down to is planning.
Yes.
I mean, people, I would suspect, and I'm not an advisor, but I suspect that people often get surprised by things like, well, wait a minute, you mean one of our Social Securities goes away? I thought I get a survivor benefit.
Or I'm not going to get that because I have a pension. I'm not going to get all of the survivor benefit.
Right. Yeah. Or I might not get any of the survivor benefit.
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense to me
because knowing about it ahead of time allows you to plan for it.
Well, it does, and there are certain things you can use. We've talked about, which we don't have time to get into, but we've talked about pensionizing,
pension maximization.
Pension maximization. Thank you.
I knew you were going.
Yeah. After the 118 episodes, I start to forget because we don't talk about it every day. Pension maximization, where you can use certain maybe life insurance policies to help cover. I mean, there are whole strategies designed to potentially allow you to have
more retirement income and cover the survivor need.
Right, because the pension, of course, you have to make an election as to what you want. Do you want to have, single life? Do you want to have
joint and survivor, 50%,
survivor.
75%, 100%,
right.
66 and 2/3%? There's all kinds of options.
Yeah, and I'm going through a situation now, or at least I know of one, where the husband gave his, they elected the wife's pension to be just life only. because it was the higher benefit, and they expected the wife to outlive the husband, but the reverse happened.
Ouch.
And
No.
so the pension went away.
Right.
And, that covered, probably a third of their planned income. And so,
And unless his needs go down by a third,
well, and
more
they're
than
not.
a third, because his taxes go up.
Well, exactly. And that's going to be the situation in next year. Anyway, it's a whole thing, but I've seen this happen, and it's without doing proper planning, it can really, really bite you. So speaking of planning, this is what you do for a living, is it not?
It is. And it's all part of the big puzzle.
That's right. In fact, you're going to be heading out of here in just a little bit to do exactly that with some folks. If you have any questions on things like this, and I don't, Social Security, here's the thing. When I talk about Social Security, when we talk about it, people who don't take their Social Security yet might think, well, it doesn't really apply to me. Why do I care? I'm 50, I'm 45, whatever it is. So why would I care about that? But these are things that you need to know. You have to understand how things like this work, and you have to plan for them. Because if you're planning on getting a, survivor benefit and a pension, or you're planning on taking your pension and your Social Security, and you're in this particular...
And all of a sudden you find out you're not going to get it?
Yes.
It comes as a shock.
Well, it does. And if you
now
know
you
about
scramble.
this... You do. But if you know about this 10, 15 years ahead of time, that this potential can happen, then I think you could be much better off. If you want to talk to Professor Plum or any of the Lucia Capital Group advisors, they do this stuff all the time. And as I said last time, they love it. 800-644-1150. The number off air at Lucia Capital Group, 800-644-1150. Talk to Professor Plum or any of the Lucia Capital Group advisors who work with him. You need to know a Social Security strategy. It's all part of a bucket strategy. In fact, it's one of the first things that they look at is Social Security. Correct, Professor Plum?
Well, it's the foundation for a lot of the retirement income that you're going to have.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So you want to talk about this, they know about it. 800-644-1150. You can also check out online, see all kinds of videos and articles, blog posts. We got them all at luciacap.com, luciacap.com. Find us on Spotify and download our episodes. Listen to them all, because we cover different angles of just about every financial topic you can imagine. And if you have questions, you can certainly email us there at luciacap.com. It's been a fun season. Now we're going to take a couple of weeks here.
Happy holidays.
Yes, that's right. Through the end of 2022, which means that we're going to have an episode for early January of 2023. You going to be ready for that?
See you in 2023.
I guess.
Wow.
We'll
2023 already.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what more I can say about that. We're just fortunately we're not getting older. For Professor Rick Plum, CFP, I'm your podcast host, Johnny Dean. Thanks so much for listening, and we will talk to you again next time. The information provided should not be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice and is not specific to any individual's personal circumstances. Each taxpayer should seek independent advice from a tax professional based on his or her individual circumstances. Different types of investments and/or investment strategies involve varying levels of risk, and there can be no assurance that any specific investment or investment strategy will be profitable for a client's or prospective client's portfolio. Thus, investments may result in a loss of principal. Accordingly, no client or prospective client should assume that the information presented serves as the receipt of or a substitute for personalized advice from Lucia Capital Group or from any other investment professional. You should always seek counsel of the appropriate advisor prior to making any investment decision. All investments are subject to risk, including the loss of principal. This material was gathered from sources believed to be reliable. However, its accuracy cannot be guaranteed. The information provided is based on current laws, which are subject to change at any time. Lucia Capital Group is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency. Social Security rules can be complex. For more information about Social Security benefits, visit the SSA website at ssa.gov or call 800-772-1213 to speak with an SSA representative. Insurance services offered through LPL Financial or its licensed affiliates. California Insurance License Number 0518721. Rick Plum is a registered representative with, and security and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor and member FINRA SIPC. The investment professionals are affiliated with LPL Financial and are conducting business using the name Lucia Capital Group, a separate entity from LPL Financial.